Thanks for coming along, parents, and thanks along for the boys as well for coming tonight to our breakout session where I'll be covering religious education, Miss Gardner will be covering English, and Miss Giles will be talking to you about mathematics. So, welcome. I am going to give you some information about what religious education looks like in stage 6 at St Gregory's College, so for years 11 and 12 for your sons. So my name is Jenny Tansey, I'm the Head of Department for Religious Education. I have had the pleasure of being at St Greg's since 2014. In addition to that as well, I've also been a HSC marker for the Studies of Religion course for the last 6 years, so I can give you a little bit of an insight about the value of the course. So in stages 4 and 5, your sons have studied Catholic studies as part of their compulsory religious education component at St Greg's. And that looks a little bit different as we progress on to stage 6. So what are your options? Your options are the 3 that we have here. So there's studies in Catholic thought, which is a 1-unit subject. There's Studies of Religion 1, which you might have guessed is our 1-unit subject, and Studies of Religion 2. I think it's important that we also look at why is it that you need to study religion, and why is it that we study Studies of Religion and Catholic thought at St Greg's? Well, the answer to the first one is that you don't really have a choice, okay? It is compulsory at the college, so as a Catholic school, religious education is a not negotiable. However, it's very, very different to the Catholic Studies course that's offered in stages 4 and 5. I certainly think SOR and Catholic thought are definitely more challenging in the sense that they are responding to your son's growing emotional and spiritual needs as well. So beyond the ATAR, which I think is always important to look at as well, there's lots of ATAR talk and career talk, but what lies beyond this as well is that studies of religion and definitely studies of Catholic thought, they foster a global citizenship, spiritual maturity, and definitely an emotional awareness and empathy towards the other. These are qualities that are very, very difficult to measure, but certainly and most definitely extremely important and invaluable, and probably a lot of the reason about why you have decided to send your son to St Greg's. So what do these courses look like? Well, which one should you choose? Now, the first one, Studies in Catholic Thought. If you are not considering an ATAR, this would be the course that you would be choosing. All right, the Studies in Catholic Thought, that would be the 1-unit course. For boys who are thinking, yes, I think an ATAR is where I'm headed, I'd suggest Studies of Religion 1. That is our board-developed course. And probably for our boys who are more certain that university and tertiary career is where they're going to be progressing to, Studies of Religion 2 would be best suited for these students. Just give you a little look at what you'll actually be studying in these courses, because there's nothing like turning up and thinking, what am I actually doing here? So Studies in Catholic Thought, that is solely just focusing on the Catholic denomination, right? There's not studying of other religious traditions at all. There is our Year 11 content, so who is a human person, Trinitarian God, reimagining of creation, and then Year 12 moves on to vice, virtue, salvation, the good works and the common good. These are heavy courses as well. So even though they're for our non-ATAR students, they are challenging, and they will have your boys, extending their thought process as well. Studies of Religion 1, very similar to the Studies of Religion 2 course, and we'll have parallels in the preliminary year, looking at the nature of religion and beliefs. We have a range of five religious traditions that NESA have said that we are permitted to study from. The 2 that we choose for Studies of Religion 1, we focus on Christianity, and the other subject we focus on is Buddhism. That's our other religious study. And everything that you do in Year 11 carries over to Year 12. So I say to my Year 11 boys, unfortunately, you can't throw away the notes, because it's all prerequisites. It's all pre-assumed knowledge for your HSC course. So everything carries over. So those 2 depth studies that you do in Year 12 based on what you did in Year 11, in Christianity, the depth studies are a significant person, practice, and an ethical looking at a particular ethic associated with that religion. So in Christianity, we'll look at bioethics, we study the practice of baptism, and our significant person is Paul of Tarsus. For Buddhism, our person is, we would look at Asoka there, and we would also study temple puja and environmental ethics, so something quite light. The only difference you'll see in the Studies of Religion 2 course is that there is an extra depth study, or there's an extra study, religious tradition study on Islam. There's also the other 2 units on ancient origins and pre-45, the religious landscape in Australia pre-45, carrying over to Year 12. Once again, those depth studies, and an additional study of looking at religion and peace, and religion and non-religion. Those last 2 being, we talked about global citizenship earlier, and that those last 2 really promote the qualities. You know, the boys can turn on the news of a night and have a greater understanding about, you know, why the world is the way that it is. All right, so that was the nitty-gritty. Here comes down some important points to remember. Catholic thought, studies in Catholic thought, that'll be the abbreviation that you will see. It is the most appropriate option for our non-ATAR students. Making changes, you can change from SOR2 to SOR1 during either the preliminary course or the HSC course. You can change. However, you can't go the other way. All right, you would have noticed that we study some extra things in SOR2, so unfortunately if you get to the end of Year 11 and you think, wow, preliminary course was great, I really want to do SOR2, you can't. Okay, so please make sure it's easier to go from 2 to 1. We can't do the other way around, so it's important to get that decision right at the beginning. You can also change from SOR, whether it's 1 or 2, to Catholic thought. All right, we have a lot of boys who might start Year 11, start their journey thinking, ATAR is where I want to go, this is what I want to do, and then life happens, and they get to the end of Year 12 and they think, yep, no, ATAR is not where I'm headed. All right, so there's no point sitting that 2-unit SOR2 course. So you can move from SOR2 or SOR1 to Catholic thought at any point in Year 11 or Year 12. What you do need to remember though, for the boys considering SOR1 and SOR2, it is not an easy option. All right, it is not an easy option. It is a difficult and challenging subject. All right, there is lots of writing. I say there is writing, and then there's some more writing. So I would be expecting those students who are selecting those courses, that's a high proficiency in writing skills is required. There's lots of essay writing. And I need to make that, it's almost like a disclaimer first up, that I need to let you know that that's the expectation. So that's studies in Catholic thought, that's SOR1, that's SOR2 in a nutshell. Good luck with your decision making. If anybody has any questions, I will be around. Mr. Halafanua is over at the religious education table, and best of luck with your decision making. Thank you. Here is Mrs. Gardner.
Thanks, Mrs. Tansey. Good evening, parents, carers, and especially Year 10 students. I'm just going to talk to you as Head of Department about English and what's available in terms of courses for Stage 6. Firstly, I just need to tell you there's not a lot of choice in terms of doing English. You must do English. So every student in Year 11 and 12 has to study English, and it's the only compulsory subject for the HSC, so it's absolutely mandatory. You must complete at least 2 units of English, and you have to keep those 2 units of English for the duration of Years 11 and 12. You are allowed to move courses, so just as Mrs. Tansey was talking about being able to move across courses, it is possible to move from some of our courses into others, but I'll give you a bit more detail about that. If you're a student who's going for an ATAR, you must count your 2 units of English in your ATAR calculation. So it's a really important subject, and it's really important to choose wisely, and it's really important that when you're in that course that you work really well at it, because it does count towards your ATAR. So I know that you've been given a form this evening, and it has recommendations for subjects and recommendations for courses within those subjects. And those recommendations are based on your semester 1 report for year 10. So there is some movement available, they're recommendations, but those recommendations have been made with due diligence and consideration from the teachers within the courses, the year 10 courses at the moment. So if you need to discuss, I'll be outside after this session, and we can talk about whether the course that's listed for you is the one that you actually want to do and why you've been recommended to take a particular approach. So I'll just run you really quickly through the courses that would have been recommended on forms. So the first one is English Studies, and this is a course that was originally designed for students who weren't intending to go on to tertiary education, weren't intending to go to university. It has since become an ATAR approved course, but I would recommend, if you are someone who genuinely wants an ATAR, that English Studies is not really the course for you. You should be looking at standard English to get that ATAR. So there's an exam component now if you are going to use English Studies for your HSC and for your ATAR. But by and large, this subject is for those students who English is not necessarily their favourite. Don't know why that's the case. It's not necessarily their strength, but they have to do English, and it becomes a course that's more about community-based texts, and it has real-world relevance. So it's looking at skills and knowledge that will translate into the real world. For this course, you're looking at a range of different texts and a range of different modules. I haven't listed those modules because they do change from year to year, dependent on the teachers who are taking the course at the time. So there's also some choice involved with respect to the students and what they might like to study. But it's important to look at where there's definitely still text that you need to study, but there doesn't seem to be as much writing in terms of essay writing, academic writing. Instead, it's writing for real world situations and real life situations. In this course, though, you do have to complete what's called a common module, and that is common to both standard and advanced, and I'll talk about those courses in a moment. So there is a sense that there's still some rigour and academic pursuit to this course. English Standard is the course that most students would have been recommended for on their sheet this evening, and it's the one that most students at St Greg's actually study. So it's an ATAR approved course, 3.5 hours worth of HSC exams. I would call this a literature-based course. So it is quite rigorous, and there's a definite amount of academic and essay writing involved. Most students across the state actually study standard, and you need to be prepared to study 3 different types of prescribed texts, so prose fiction, poetry or drama, non-fiction, film or media, and then again there is that common module, text and human experiences. The next level course is English Advanced, and this is for our students who would be in the top tier English classes at the moment. So students who are in the A and B classes, you would have been the ones who would be recommended to undertake Advanced for next year. This one is what I would consider to be a highly academic course. The texts are quite complex, there's a lot of writing involved, particularly essay writing, lots of reading, and definite academic rigour to this subject. Again, common module, text and human experiences, and the thing that sets this course apart from the others is that you must study Shakespeare. So if Shakespeare is something that you do not enjoy, that you do not want to pursue, then probably do not take English Advanced, because it's a mandatory component within that course for Year 11 and 12. For recommendation for this course, you need to have established yourself as a capable English student. So you need to have a track record, a proven track record. So the students who would have been recommended for this course would be those who have received A's and or B's on their reports across years 7 to 10. And we're looking at students who consistently get marks above 80. And that is simply because it's the kind of course where you do need to come to it with a certain level of skill and level of ability. So our eligible students would have already been recommended for this course by Mr. Bombardieri. These two courses we have really small candidature for, but I'll just talk briefly about them because there are people in this room who would be eligible. These courses, Extension 1 and Extension 2, it's an additional unit for Extension 1, and you start that in Year 11 and it continues into Year 12. Extension 2 is a course that you pick up in Year 12 and it gives you a 4th unit of English. In addition to having skills and abilities, there also has to be some sense of passion that you really love English if this is what you want to do and want to pursue in terms of subject selection. Again, really academically rigorous courses, and you would need to have been able to prove yourself as a really capable writer and reader and processor of texts. So if there are any questions, I'll be outside at the stalls out there, and that's it for English for this evening, and I'll pass you over to Mrs. Giles to talk about maths. Thank you.
Okay, good evening everyone. My voice, I still haven't got it back from the end of last term, so apologies. Okay, so I'm here to talk about maths, and for next year there are some courses available. So we have Standard 1 and Maths Standard 2, and we have Mathematics Advanced Extension 1, and at the end with English, Extension 2 is available in Year 12. So I'll just outline some of the courses. So our Maths Standard, and for next year we will have a specific Standard 1 class that is geared towards the non-ATAR student or the HSC plus students, because generally in Year 11 everybody does the same standard course, and then in Year 12 it branches off into the two different courses. So Standard 1 is non-ATAR, and it has an optional 2-hour exam that you can do for the HSC, but the Maths Standard 2 is an actual 2.5-hour exam. Now, in Year 11, we're actually opting to allow students to study Standard 1 right from the beginning, and so the actual assessment for the Standard 1 students won't be as rigorous as that for those students that will be moving on to Standard 2. But the understanding of that is that if you choose to do the non-ATAR Standard 1 in Year 11, you can't just jump up and do the Standard 2 in Year 12. So essentially you would follow that non-ATAR pathway. So instead of, we have had numeracy, we have had maths in trades in the past, but because of the NESA requirements now, we're now changing to be an actual Standard 1 because it's a board developed course. So in Year 11, obviously with Standard, you'll study things like algebra, measurement, financial maths, statistical analysis and networks, and this course is mainly for those students that have been doing Pathway 2. So if you've been doing Pathway 2, then the Maths Standard course is for you. Obviously Pathway 3 students can do Standard as well if they're looking for, obviously, to get a better ATAR with those results. And then we move on to Mathematics Advanced. So Mathematics Advanced has a prerequisite of doing all of Pathway 2 and most of Pathway 3. So Pathway 2 students actually are ineligible to do Mathematics. Mathematics Advanced has a 3-hour HSC exam. So in Year 11, you do things like working with functions, trigonometry, measure of angles, trigonometric functions, etc. This course is academically rigorous, and I would suggest that maths study on a Wednesday afternoon is pretty much compulsory for anyone that does Maths Advanced. And just like English, you really need to like maths to actually take on Maths Advanced. Just having been good at maths is not good. This is an actual work ethic sort of thing, so you need to love doing maths. And then obviously Extension 1 on from there. This is very academically rigorous. I would say that this one extra unit of maths is worth about 2 units of work. So even the students doing Year 11 Extension 1 this year, who were extremely good Pathways 3 students last year, are struggling with the amount of work that they have to do. They said all we're doing is maths. So it can affect your other subjects if that's the way you're going to go. So you just want to be able to live and breathe maths. Like, there's nothing wrong with that. That's a really good thing. So obviously it's going to have harder things from the advanced course plus a lot of extra additional things that are really fun. So again, it is a very rigorous course, and math study is compulsory for those people that are doing Extension 1. Then Extension 2 is obviously in Year 12. Those students that are doing well in Extension 1 will be obviously offered the opportunity to do Extension 2, which is pure mathematics, and so you'll be doing 4 units. But Extension 2 is different in maths than it is to English. You don't have to actually do the advanced course. You don't have to do the advanced exam. You'll just do the Extension 1 and the Extension 2 exams for the HSC with your 4 units, and you're just given a band 6 in advanced maths because you're so good at maths, and so it's better than English. Okay, don't tell Mrs. Gardner I said that. All right, I'll be outside if you've got any questions as well. So thank you very much.